some people wonder, well, the A's ought to, interview Shildt. And I don't think that would have been a good job for Shildt, because I think Shilt's got to be careful. I don't think he wants to take a garbage job. I think he'll get another chance, but it's got to be a good fit. So we'll see what happens next offseason, when there's always going to be managerial changes. So we'll see what the situation is. But do you think, Jim, that Mike Shildt will get another chance, or do you have any thoughts or opinions about maybe why there wasn't a little bit more of a market for him after the Cardinals let him go?
I think, there is a little bit of, wow, no, not really a solid sniff from anybody else. Now, there weren't like a ton of jobs available by that time, but still, I was like, the Padres didn't knock on the door a little bit more.
Yeah, they talked to him. He did get an interview.
And I'm not saying he was the right fit there. It's just one of those things that he was third managerial of the year, and he got a team that was in the playoffs. Now,
and he won the award in 19.
Yeah,
he's 3 years in a row in the postseason. He's got cred.
He does have the credibility. There were times that he got on our nerves here, and I know my nerves. I was like, oh, come on, get with it a little bit, be a little more stand up on some of these guys. But and then there's the noise on why did he get fired? Why did he get let go out of the blue? And I'm sure maybe some people know more than what I know. So, well, that's got to be part of that. Or maybe they don't know and they're skeptical of like, well, there's a reason, and I don't have the info, so I may kind of distance themselves from that until they find out more.
Probably want to let that rest for a while. That's the only thing I can think. I don't think people are against them. It's just there's no Mike Shildt boycott per se. Not that anyone is suggesting there is. There really weren't that many jobs open anyway. That's the other thing. But I will say this, and people, some people will get mad at me, but I mean, my information is solid, and I've alluded to it several times, and just because others are, perhaps reluctant to stick their neck out there a little bit. I've never been like that, never will be. There's a pipeline in Major League Baseball. There is whether you want to call it a gossip line or you want to call it a back channel. I mean, there's always the thing that people need to realize is that Major League coaches, and there are a lot of them, and, whether they stay in one place a long time or they move around, but those guys all kind of stick together. So whenever there's something going on, they tend to exchange information. And I think that in this case, one possibility is that because of the MLB coaches pipeline, so to speak,
right?
I'm sure there was considerable discussion again privately on Shildt's relationship with his coaches and how things really kind of got haywire. And if that's the type of thing that would get back up to the level of the front office where they're trying to figure out who to hire or who to look at. It's just like, well, gosh, it's really, number one, it's strange that he would get fired after winning Manager of the Year in 19 and being third this year and taking that team to the playoffs 3 years in a row. They hadn't been to the playoffs the 3 years in a row before that. So something's not right. What could it be? And then, the words get back, it's like, man, he really turned on his coaches. He really, just became a different guy and just really started berating people and, kind of really turned off his own guys. And so if that got around, that certainly would factor in to the thinking of other organizations to at least give it a little time. Just give it a little time, find out more. And again, this doesn't mean that Mike Shildt's a bad person, not at all. I mean, but the way it is today, you want to make sure your manager is well grounded. I think he is. But you're going to want to know more about what went wrong with his coaching staff and why. And by the way, because I know right now, 98% of the people listening assume that, Jeff Albert was throwing daggers at him. No, Jeff Albert was one of many down there where things were just haywire. I mean, this wasn't a one guy or an isolated thing. Not at all. So. But and I know other people are listening right now, and they're saying, "Well, why didn't you write about it? Why didn't you?" I did. So I don't. Yeah. I mean, it ain't my it ain't my fault if people choose to ignore it. So, because it's there and it's been there, And the only other media person that I've seen allude to it is Katie Wu at The Athletic. So, again, no crimes were committed, but it would give other organizations a little pause if they hear all this stuff through the coach's grapevine. That's all I'm saying, really.
Yep. And I think he'll get a job eventually. He will. It's got to, like you said, be the right fit. New York was not the right fit for Mike Shildt. We just got done talking about Showalter. No. That's not not saying they'll have a managerial change, but a place like Texas would be a spot to go.
It could be. Yeah.
If they don't get off to a good start, they want to change it. But he could be a guy that could fit in that kind of spot.
I think getting out of the fire a little bit probably be good for him. And I know that sounds crazy, and he would disagree with that. But I say that out of sincerity. I think, sometimes just emotional time, and sometimes people change in the job that they're in. Success goes to their head a little bit. And again, that some of that was evidence in some of the post game stuff, but he's a good man and he's a really good manager, and he'll whatever needs to be adjusted, he'll adjust it. And I think I think he's introspective enough to take care of what he's got to take care of. So, and I hope he gets another gig. I'm not going to say I forgot about it. I guess I kind of forgot about it because when the Mets hired Buck Showalter as the manager, I thought it was an interesting hire. I'm glad he's back because I think he's an interesting manager. And I don't know him personally, but when he was managing the Orioles, I thought he did a really good job, and I appreciated his style. And I also know he's an old school guy. I got nothing against old school baseball guys. It depends on how open or closed their minds are. But as Jim reminded me, when the Mets hired Buck Showalter, there was, in terms of baseball media, it was kind of like, you better order an extra party bus or two because the first one filled up right away, and you might need 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And we're just having fun with this, but it is amazing, Jim, that the hosannas that went to Buck when the Mets finally hired him, and I'm glad they did. But it'll be funny. But don't you think it's a matter of kind of the more traditional baseball media and people who think that they won't admit it because they know that ship has sailed, but they still have allergic reactions to anything analytics, and I understand that to a point. When you're professional, though, you need to make sure you're on top of things. But yeah, the whole analytics thing does turn people off, including fans. That's why, even though I talk about it, I try to avoid like reading numbers all the time. I just try to pick my spots for that. But I think that I think that the traditional baseball media and the kind of anti-analytics groups out there, I think they see him as like a victory in this battle. You get an old school guy back that, let's celebrate, mm-hmm. Baseball's recognizing they've got to get away from all this crap, or something to that effect. I got to think that's part of it.
I think so, too, but especially for some of the people that I saw that were responding. Oh, this is a great hire. This is what they've needed for a long time. And like, okay, maybe, obviously he's a veteran manager. He's been around. There's not too many things. He's been in that market, which I think is kind of important.
Oh, yeah.
That really is, and having to deal with media and that. But it was also, like you said, it was like, wait a minute. You and I even talked about this when he was working one of the playoff games this year, and it was him and Jim Cott, and it might have been Bob Costas. I don't think it was.
Right, it was, yeah.
And between Cott and Showalter, all they kept complaining about, these guys don't even go 4 innings anymore, and this and that. And I was like, maybe before you just jump on and say this is the greatest thing in the world, listen to what the guy's saying in terms of just how he was analyzing the ball game. That's not how the game's being done now. And I hope he gets a lot of success, Bernie. But
yeah,
if it goes sailing right by him, you're going to go, see, you didn't look at what was right in front of you.
And if he adjusts some of the thinking, I think that can be done. And I think it all depends on who who your pitchers are, and I'm going to have to go to a cheat sheet, if you will, because I want to see, and it only take me a second here, so I'm not going to waste too much time. In fact, I'm just about right there. I'm looking at roster resource, and I just want to see, like right now, it could change, like who the Mets have for a rotation, other than the two guys that jump out that we know about, Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom. Tejan Walker is back. Carlos Carrasco missed a lot of time, last year, but he's back, and he's good when he's healthy. Being healthy is a big question. And I guess our fifth starter is Tyler McGill right now, who I don't know that he's much, and I don't think he is. And even I don't want to judge Carrasco because last year again, that's just a year you throw out. I mean,
right.
He was coming back from health issues, and Walker was okay. But Scherzer's an innings guy, so a Buck Showalter can. He and Scherzer will be simpatico because Scherzer wants to go deep into games. DeGrom wants to go kind of deep into games, but I don't know that that's all that smart for him anymore because that could be Showalter's biggest challenge because DeGrom doesn't want to be like a 5-inning guy, right? But DeGrom also breaks down all the time. And it's kind of, he's also older than I think many assume. I know that I didn't assume that he was like 33 and a half years old. Not that makes him ancient, but he's not 28 either. So what do you do? What do you do with a guy like DeGrom who's kind of stubborn about how he wants to pitch and how long and deep he wants to pitch? Where, you got to use some common sense. Maybe maybe he needs to be a 5-inning starter. I don't know. But that could be a test ground for Buck Showalter. But I don't know. I think he was hired not to bring back, 1990s baseball or whatever. I don't think that's it. I think it's because of he's good with the media. In no particular order. He's really good with the media. He's very quotable. He's got opinions. He's pretty accommodating. Number two, he already had managed in New York, so he can navigate that jungle. Whereas, Jim, I had a laugh. I got a detour, but this is related to what I just said.
Okay.
I had a laugh when the Mets had that job open, and I'd hear from so many people. It's like, well, why don't they interview Shildt? Like, why? I don't understand. Why wouldn't they hire Shildt? They haven't even really interviewed him. And I'm like, people who want to pretend personality doesn't matter in terms of a manager and a market, right? It's really naive. A Mike Shildt would get eaten alive in New York, so there's no point at all in even trying that. His personality just doesn't fit the market. And one of the reasons why I know that? Because he just fired the guy who, in effect, has the same type of temperament and personality as Mike Shildt. Luis Rojas, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, low key guy, tries to be Mr. Nice Guy, everybody's buddy, comes off a little phony and all this other stuff. He was never a stylistic fit for the New York Mets. And I don't understand why people don't realize that, right? Can you imagine that some of that post-game crap that we saw here for a couple years? Can you imagine that in New York? No, seriously.
No, that would not have gone over well.
Right. I mean, it's over. I mean, it should never start, right?
Yeah.
He needs to find. We'll talk about that another time because he'll get another job. He deserves it. It's got to be the right fit, or what's the point? Anyway, Showalter has already fought the animals in the New York jungle. I'm talking about the media.
Yeah, he has.
So he knows his way around, And the other thing, I will say this: it's reading some of the stories. I did get some insight. From a Ken Rosenthal or a Tim Britton, guys who, first, we all know Rosenthal, but Britton, covers the Mets for The Athletic, and they were both of them made the point that he's really good with players, and he's really good holding them accountable without causing hard feelings. And who swears by him? It would surprise a lot of people. Manny Machado swears by him. Mm-hmm. And there were 2 or 3 times when Machado was an Oriole where Buck Showalter, in effect, had to call him out, where Manny was wrong, like instigating a brawl, for example, with Josh Donaldson back in the day. And Manny was in the wrong. He overreacted to something. And, you know, the way, and I won't repeat it, but the way that Showalter handled that, like, every player in the room respected it, and so did Machado, because Buck made his point in no uncertain terms. He was absolutely fearless. He made it clear that he thought that was wrong, and you got to pick your spots. Like he said, I got no problem with going after the other team if it's warranted, but we got to be careful. We got to pick our spots. I don't think we're doing a good job of that lately, and that was basically about Machado. Machado appreciated that he didn't dress him down by name, and that they had private conversations about that. But in front of the rest of the team, he really got his point across, and everyone knew what he was talking about. But he showed respect to the player by not dwelling on him by name. And some people say, well, he's a wimp then. No, you don't understand clubhouses. That's not how it works. So, and then reading other people, Zach Britton, who was the reliever that Showalter famously did not use when the Orioles went down to Toronto in the playoffs. And he just kept the best reliever in the league. He kept him in the bullpen, never used him because, like, well, I can't bring my closer in a tie game on the road. Well, yeah, you can actually. So it was a huge mistake. The players were talking about it spring training the following year when they opened spring training. There was a meeting. He brought everyone into this little, this big conference room they have or whatever down there. And the first thing he said, I got to get something out of the way, the elephant in the room. I screwed up. I made a mistake. I didn't do the right thing there. It's my bad totally. If I'm ever in that situation again, I'm not going to let you down. Every player in that clubhouse immediately thought, stand-up guy. I'm glad he's our manager. I mean, that's exactly what you want the manager to say, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's over with. That's good enough for me. Let's move forward. So running a clubhouse and all the people and understanding that all the personalities are different, and understanding that you're not there to be their buddy, but you're also not there to persecute them if they screw up. He handles those things really, really, really well. And he's very big on accountability. And as a couple of his coaches in the past have said, when they're revisiting Buck now, whether this will work, they say the one thing about him, unlike some of these young managers, he's not afraid to talk to a player. I mean, he's not afraid to tell a player, hey, look, we got to have a conversation about this. He's not afraid to hold them accountable in a direct way. That can be a problem. I think it was a problem here in St. Louis a little bit. Not horrible, but I think it was a problem here in St. Louis a little bit. So what I'm trying to say is I know I went the long way to get there, but I had to give the background to actually make the point. A lot of this is like a celebration of the old school, hey, one of our guys got hired, which is just a stupid thing to celebrate.
Right.
But there's real merit and there's real common sense in actually hiring him for that job in that situation, because I think he'll navigate it really well. And the Mets really do need, I'm talking about the players, they really do need accountability. There was a lot of stuff going on last year, as you remember, all remember. A lot of stuff.
They do need, and even, well, Torrey was different, but he was still you need a strong personality to be your manager. And right. While Torrey doesn't come off as, this, yell and scream guy, he's still a strong personality, just in a different way. And there is something to be said about Buck having that. And again, been there with the Yankees, been there, done that. I just thought it was so funny, though, when they were just like, this is the greatest thing in the world. I go, wait a minute. Do you guys understand what's going on here? Read a little bit between the lines before you start waving the pom-poms. That's the greatest thing in the world. But we'll see.
And, look, their owner obviously is a win now, do whatever it takes owner. Steve Cohen, right? You need a win now mentality in your manager's office. I think just because of the owner you have. I really believe that it has to be kind of a philosophical match. And they didn't bring Buck in. In fact, it would be stupid to bring in a team to bring him in for some kind of to see some long-term rebuilding project. That would never work. But Buck has done a really good job of turning teams around. I mean, he got the Yankees back in the playoffs, and got a lot of praise for it. I mean, second year, he was the original manager of the Diamondbacks, the expansion team. The second year, of their existence. He got him in the playoffs. I mean, we could go right. Listen, the situation in Baltimore was not a good one. He completely changed the culture, got them winning. I think he managed in Texas somewhere, and I have like no recollection of the work he did there, but I do know that he managed A-Rod, and that's the other thing about him. He has managed wealthy, big contract, big ego guys throughout his whole career. That's never been an issue, and he's done pretty well with those guys. Very well, actually.
Yeah, that's a good point. You got to be able to manage some egos, and there'll be some egos in that Mets locker room because they're going to spend money.
I think it's funny though, but if you have to subscribe to The Athletic, but Manny Machado, very happily praised the hiring. The Athletic called him, and he said he's always been a guy that taught players how to play the right way and how to lead the right way. He always kept me humble. As a young player, I learned a lot from him. It made me the player I am today by learning and observing everything he did and how he handled everything on the baseball field. And then he talked about, he said, Machado continued, he said, obviously I came up, I had all-stars, this and that. He always kept me humble. Every single year he would tell me the same thing. Hey, you're not bigger than the game. Go out there, play the game. This game will humble you. If you play the game the right way, the baseball gods will repay you. So he's got a touch with guys like Manny Machado. And if you think about it, when Manny Machado played in Baltimore, I mean, he was universally liked. I mean, he did get into a couple, again, where he sort of instigated stuff on the field. And so you could, put an X next to his name for a couple of those things. But if you look at Manny Machado playing for Buck Showalter compared to the guy we've seen in later years, who isn't popular, who is widely disliked, right?
Oh, yeah.
And people question how hard he plays at times, things like that. That stuff was never an issue in Baltimore. So, I mean, that alone says a lot about Showalter's ability to run a clubhouse.
It's interesting you brought that up because I just remembered as soon as he got out of Baltimore, he went to L.A., right? He was, I don't want to say dirty, but he was kind of a dirty player in the playoffs there, stepping on guys' legs and stuff. I was like, you don't play the game that way.
No. So I think that old school mentality, if in fact people are celebrating it, I would just say they need to celebrate it for the right reasons. Listen to what Manny Machado says. See, those are the right reasons to have an old school mentality. And Machado went on to say, Buck had the old school mentality. If you played hard, you did what you needed to do, you worked hard, and you were ready for the game every single day. You wouldn't need to be in his office. As a young player, sometimes you get off track a little. He was able to steer me back on the right path and show me the way I needed to be to get where I wanted to be. I always knew he wanted the best for me, the best for the team. He just wanted the best out of myself and out of the team always. And just knowing that as a player, you're able to go out there and give it your all every single day for a person like that. So, I mean, that kind of stuff from Manny Machado is pretty strong. I mean, I really believe that. He, like you say, well, what do you expect him to say? He's not going to rip him. But no.
He didn't have to say anything, really. He just says, he's fine.
That praise was lavish or, generous. I mean, he clearly wanted to make everyone know exactly how strong he feels about Buck Showalter. So I think that's a hell of a bit of testimony right there. But it'll be fun. I think it's good for the Mets. It certainly makes them a heck of a lot more interesting. Same with Max Scherzer as well. So, but the old school is back. He's going to get rid of all those analytics, Jim. It's going to be it's going to be, we're going to be playing some 70s baseball in New York. So
no pitch counts for anyone. Go out there and get it done.
Maybe a little bit. No, if he brings, like, again, man, there's room for both things in this game. That's what people take sides in this old school versus analytics. That's the thing they don't understand. There's room for everybody, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You don't have, it's not all or nothing. So I think Buck actually gets that. I do. I think he actually gets that.